Welcome everyone. My name is Claudio Rivera, and I will be hosting this pre-event that we have with a great friend of us and professor from MIT, Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen is the Senior Director of MIT Horizon Projects at MIT Open Learning, and as well is the Executive Director of the Center for Collective Intelligence. Sounds very interesting at MIT. And MIT has been doing for many years a lot of work around what we call ontology of work. It's what we are going to hear today a little bit, and is thinking about the work of the future, so how the work will look like, using also a specific framework that is one of those design framework called the Supermind Design framework. All this, as well, a lot of this information is available online to help organizations to adapt and evolve in this new era of artificial intelligence. So it's a very timely discussion. When I posted in LinkedIn, a lot of people saying, can we attend it online? Can we come here in some way or other? And it's clear because if today we have the official opening of AI, of RBS new premises, for AI we didn't have an official opening, so it came uninvited to the world, and suddenly it created a huge change, and it's a reality, right? So that we see big tech investments on the billions of dollars and euros all over the place, so it's real. AI is a real thing right now. We see a lot of estimates on the impact on the economy and on the labor, right? So from potential mass displacement to some reports on surprisingly modest productivity gains with AI. I also was last week with a team from University of Harvard that is already studying the impact of AI on mental health and flourishing, and really AI generates serious concerns about how the human interactions, this new type of human interaction, human-machine interaction, will impact our relationships and eventually as well our happiness and our flourishing. So there are a lot of really issues that we need to think, but also we need practical solution, and we need new initiatives that start to test things. And I have always admired in MIT the capacity to explore, experiment, move forward, even when the answers sometimes still are ahead of us. So today Kathleen is going to share with us their thinking, and also how organizations can really start creating solutions and taking a very proactive approach in this new era. We want this session to be very interactive, so Kathleen is going to present during 20-25 minutes or so, and then we'll kick off the Q&A session. So feel free, and we welcome any comments and questions. So we want this to be really a dialogue. Okay, Kathleen, the floor is yours.
Claudia, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Let's see, a minor note. I am actually not a professor, but I have been at MIT for 25 years. So that is a lot of experience from being at the Institute. And I think that, yes, we feel like there's a lot in front of us with AI, but we have a lot of experience to look at. That AI has been around for decades. And at MIT, we've been working on it for a very long time. So let's go into some ideas, but also feel free to raise your hand. So I'm just going to get out of the way so you can see the slides easily. Feel free to raise your hand, and we can have a discussion as we go to. You don't have to be polite and wait till the end. Okay? So, as Claudia said in the beginning, there's a lot going on right now. It feels like change is happening so fast, and we're really seeing new things every single day. We've got things like, I don't know if you looked at the US stock market yesterday, but it really went fairly low. And a lot of that is because some of the things that we feel like AI is driving stock prices artificially too high, right? And that there's a lot in that market. But the other thing that related to that has happened is that the way that we're doing things is differently. The stock market had been sort of open in very traditional hours and worked in a traditional way for a very long time. And they recently announced that that's going to be changing, and that trading's going to be happening, almost all day and all night. So that's something that's changing. Markets are changing. Very traditional markets, like an automotive market that had been fairly stable and had certain players in the market for a long time, two big ones right here, the autonomous vehicle market is transforming and moving very rapidly. So you see in that market, the top 5, this was a slide that I did about a year and a half ago, the top 5 players in the autonomous vehicle market, only 2 of them were traditional automotive manufacturers. 3 of them were pure tech players getting into that market. But as of now, that's even changing. Since Apple has exited, Tesla, who knows with Tesla these days, if you feel like it's changing all the time, and then you have all of these new players coming into the market, right? So you're seeing a lot of change and transformation happening, and it feels like it's happening so fast. Then, add on top of that, who cares about cars? We're going to start doing transportation and taxis in new ways. They're experimenting in New York with helicopter taxis, right? So we're thinking about completely new modes of operating. And to top it all off, we have AI that's actually starting to be able to do things better than humans. We have AI models that are able to detect cancer far better than doctors, human doctors. What does that mean? What do we do with all this? And so I would think in this room we have probably, I'd love to actually take a poll, how many of you are educators or work in education? Okay, about 1/3. And then how many work for, so is that working for a educational institution? So who works for a college or a high school or a grade school? Okay, and then how many of you work for in industry, for a company? Okay, and then folks from the government?
They are coming.
They're coming, sure. Traffic. So we've got an even distribution of people with different roles. So we're trying to think about what do organizations look like in this fast-moving, ever-changing world? And how do we think about the humans that are operating in this organization? So that's the heart of my work and what I do. And so there's a question of how do we do it? In America, we have different ways that we're doing things. But at MIT, I'm working in 2 areas where we're focusing on, at the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence, something called Supermind Design and Supermind Design tools that are looking at how do we organize work in this time of so much change. And then at MIT Open Learning, I run a program called MIT Horizon and now MIT Workforce Learning that we're thinking about how is work being transformed and how do we train people for this future of work. So let me take you into these 2 areas of the work and why they're so important to think about together. So first of all, Supermind Design. Doesn't that sound cool? I love the sound of it. But really what it is it's so important. But in order to understand that it's not just sort of a Marvel movie, that it in fact is an academic design methodology, let's think about what are superminds. So superminds, what do you think a supermind is? It's right here, but it's really a group of individuals that are acting together in ways that seem intelligent, right? So a company is a supermind. A school is full of different types of superminds. Your church is a supermind. That's more of a community, people that have come together around shared goals. A market is a supermind. That's an organization that comes together around sort of making decisions by market influences, by supply and demand. A country is a supermind that basically, hopefully, is a democracy that is, everyone has a vote, and that's how decisions are made, or it should be. And so we have these different types of superminds all around us that are operating invisibly. But actually, as humans, this is how we have actually created, I think, such an amazing world, that we're able to operate together and build things like this building and come together in ways to have these types of intellectual discussions and make decisions and move forward. So those are all things that are intelligent, and we are individually intelligent. Now, this discussion is about often artificial intelligence. We say AI, 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 but what do we mean when we say that, right? What do we mean? Claudia, when I say, what does intelligence mean, what do you think?
Well, intelligence in general, you mean? Yeah?
Intelligence, just intelligence. Let's take away the A part.
Knowledge that makes impact.
Knowledge that makes impact. Okay.
And out of the spot.
That's yep. On this, I put him on the spot. We did not prepare that, and that's a good definition. The definition that we use in thinking about intelligence is the ability to achieve goals, right? Fairly simple definition. And then let's think about that for a second. Now, when we say individual human intelligence, what do we mean? You are able to quickly make a decision, move forward, achieve a goal, right? Computers can do the same thing. Yes?
It requires to define the goal as well.
That's,
in order to be able to achieve it.
That's right. Exactly. So exactly, who's defining the goal in artificial intelligence? That's a very interesting question to think about. And there's a whole thought exercise and tangent we could go on with that. So if we think about three types of intelligence, maybe for this conversation: individual human intelligence, your brain; artificial intelligence, AI; and collective intelligence, a combination of the two, or simply humans together, a group of humans, or a group of agents, or human and agent. Yes?
I'm just wondering that this definition is really very broad.
Sure.
Then I think of very simple organisms who are also able to reach their goals, like
They are. Ants.
Viruses.
Viruses, absolutely. So all of those things, a colony of bees is collectively very intelligent. And it's very interesting to think about that. That's why we've sort of broken this down to think about the systems, right? Yes?
Well, I think a little bit opposite. I think that not always ability to achieve goals means intelligence. Sometimes ability to achieve goals is realized through emotions or physical power or something. I just think about,
Sure, but I think
for example, criminals or something. They're just making some decisions and moves, not by the intelligence, but some other triggers.
we could get into a debate on whether or not criminals are intelligent, because I think probably many are. But do they follow the rules? Often they achieve their individual goals in conflict, perhaps, of the whole. And so that could be a moral dilemma. And I think this talk is not necessarily here to talk about the ethics around society and some of the ethics around AI. Happy to maybe have a discussion about afterwards. I'm not going to go deep into that right now, but I think that is you have come upon one of the dilemmas that I think is important to discuss.
Now, maybe we can also talk about mechanical intelligence, because
100%.
if you have a machine, but not artificial intelligence, like clock or even a factory, it is like doing, it is just
It does, exactly.
And it's goals, but do you say it's intelligence? It's maybe something that humans have been put before, but not that this mechanism is not intelligent.
So, exactly. So a mechanical, this is a really good analogy though, because artificial intelligence, similar to a clock, it's almost more of an advanced version of something that is fine-tuned. Right now, the artificial intelligence that we have is not general intelligence, it's specialized intelligence. And mostly they're fine-tuned to do one thing, right? And that's the whole point and the difference of our human intelligence. We have general intelligence where we're able to do many, many, many different things. That an artificial intelligence cannot do what even a 3-year-old child would be able to do multiple different things. And that's the important moment that we're in thinking about.
Yeah, just to add, I think that in psychology it's typically defined as ability to adapt, or this adaptation.
Adaptation is something that you're hearing a lot about sort of in the news. And we're in a really interesting moment about this.
You go into learning there, right?
And that goes into that, yeah. So well, let's come back to that when we get to learning. Yeah. Let me just come through. These bits are more about how do we think about structuring organizations in sort of this new paradigm. How do we think about when we can do things now in different ways, and even before artificial intelligence, because we've been working on this for years. And well before we were in this sort of AI moment that we're in now, thinking about digital technologies as well. Digital communication and the connection of people have changed the way that we can make decisions, the way that we can organize, the way that we can operate, right? Right now we're recording this. We're basically able to disseminate information to many more people in very rapid ways. What does that mean? How does that make us be able to organize and accomplish goals in new ways? So, have we changed our organizations and our organizational structures to be able to operate sort of with all of this capability that we have? And how should we rethink how we do that? And that's what this work is about. So I won't go into this because I think that this discussion is more rich, but just so that you know all of these things that we're working on around this methodology. And I think probably what we're hitting on is that this is a very interesting moment because organizations are optimized most often are based on the constraints that they're operating in. And what we had November 2022, fast forward 2 months from there, the constraints feel like they changed really rapidly. And I don't know if you use the same term, we call it the goalposts moved. And so they changed very quickly. And we're now in this world 2 years later that we're feeling like things are moving really fast. And that our organizations and our institutions aren't able to keep up. So then back to the Supermind Design tools, and this might be something that would be interesting for you to check out. It's just a free research tool that we built on taking some of the AI that exists out there and how do we fine tune it to help us think through how do we create new types of organizations. And so the Supermind Ideator is just a free tool that will help you think about how do you reframe challenges, and then how do you come up with innovative ideas around how to create new types of organizations, how to accomplish things in this world that we're living in today. So now thinking about this methodology, this suite of tools that we're creating at MIT, how are we applying this? What are we doing? What are some of the goals that we're setting out in what we're doing? One of them is thinking about how work is being redesigned. And so we've got a long-term project that we're working on in thinking about how can we create more intelligent organizations. One of the things that we're doing is systematically reimagining how jobs are going to be, how they're going to be done. And that's in the introduction, that was sort of hinted at, is one of the things that we're doing. We're looking at sort of what are these key challenges. Some brought up very smartly here, right, that we're all feeling. There's a lot of social anxiety around this. There's a lot of feeling that this is not being thought through. And so we're creating an ontology of activities to really help how do we work through that. And then what is the impact, right? How do we think about what this means on job displacement? Very importantly, how are we thinking about pre-skilling and reskilling our workforce? How are we thinking about people that are in school right now? What are the jobs that we need to be preparing them for? What will a job be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? How do we think about that? What are the frameworks for that? And then people that are in the workforce, how do we think about reskilling? So we've got a number of programs at MIT that we're working on. MIT Raise is, I know, something that you've been working with here. MIT Open Learning. Universal AI is a big one that we're about to launch. We've got a program that we're launching with MIT Horizon that is going to be very clear things on how do we train the workforce. I'll come back to that. Let's go halfway around the world and talk about a 5-year research project that we're working on with 17 principal investigators across MIT and about the same in Singapore, where we're exploring exactly what we're talking about here. Who is looking at the impacts on society of all of this? Hopefully someone. Well, we're working on a project that is looking at, how is work being transformed and really rethinking our relationship and the societal impact of these technologies. And so there's a deep streams of work being done around that. We've been doing a lot of experimentation. This is just one, and you've probably seen a lot of this in the news of how is AI able to actually accomplish goals faster, more cheaply, et cetera. This is just one paper in many that have been done since. Right now, we're also looking at how agentic works and how do humans negotiate with AI. We have a hard time negotiating with humans. How do you negotiate with AI? And then how does AI negotiate with each other? Like that's something really interesting to think about. So there's a lot of experimentation being done in that realm. And then how do we fix the hiring system? I don't know about you, but in America, it's feeling rather broken. And so that's something that we were doing a research project with Accenture on really rethinking the hiring process. We've done work with NATO on thinking about complex decision making in difficult situations and doing a bunch of work around that. And then this is a really great project that we worked with the country of Japan, and they were looking at depression as a countrywide challenge before the pandemic. And we were looking at models of how do you not just have your whole population on drugs, and how do you think about how communities can be leveraged in new ways, how technology can be leveraged in new ways to detect these things early, and then how do you activate communities in ways to actually improve this type of concern. So it's really how do we use these things for good, and that's work that we're really interested in. Now, I think, as promised, what's the other side of this equation? and thinking about it's not just sort of about the technology, but how do we think about the people? And so the analogy that I like to use, and I will say I did use AI to help me make this slide. The majority of this presentation I did all myself, but this one I actually had AI help me with an image, because it's the idea of so we're talking about how do you design the perfect organization in this age of AI, but if you don't train your people, if you don't have the fuel of the organization, it's just a beautiful piece of metal. Right? It doesn't go. It doesn't accomplish the goal that you want it to accomplish. And so in thinking about this, the actual idea about work has been changing for a long time. And thinking about education and the whole employment pathway, that there's this almost romantic viewpoint around it, is that your life was very linear. You studied, you went to school, you had this ambition of what you wanted to be, you got this great job, you worked that whole job, and if you were lucky enough, you would retire and have a lovely retirement, right? And sort of this idea. Now, whether or not that's actually really truly did happen, or it's just this idea of what we've had, right now we're feeling like that has changed, and that we're constantly needing to learn and relearn, and that there's a lot more job changing that is happening throughout your life. And we've got numbers to prove. So the World Economic Forum jobs report says that basically over 6 out of 10 people are going to need to be reskilled by 2030, right? So within 5 years, over half of this room is going to need some type of reskilling. And it almost feels like it might be more than that. And only 30% of companies polled by McKinsey say that they know how to do it. So if you're feeling like you don't know, you're not alone. That this is a really important thing. So we sort of put a stake in the ground this year and said that at Open Learning, we want to develop personalized learning for 1 billion people powered by AI, right? So this is a goal of what we want to achieve within the next 10 years. So how are we doing that? We formed a group called MIT Workforce Learning that I lead, and we're employing the science of learning, a number of different things that we do across Open Learning to understand how to do training at scale. We have a methodology that we built a few years ago called ACE, Agile Continuous Education, that really focuses on multimodal training. That how do you use online, individual, self-paced learning? How do you couple that with in-person? Could be online, could be in person, but how do you learn in a group setting, doing hands-on thing? And then how do you start to apply that at work to get continuous feedback of understanding? So at MIT, our motto is mind and hand, right? It's not just theoretical things that sound really good in a university, and then you go to work and it's all completely different. But how do you actually think about that continuously? So we've created a whole system of things, stackable assets, understanding all the different technologies that are powering this world, and then understanding how to apply them. Number of different aspects of things that we're doing, but let me tell you the case studies. So we've been doing this work for a number of years. I've been with Open Learning for over 5 years. And so this is not just sort of a new thing. We've put a stake in the ground for this ambition, but this is built on years of work and results. So we worked with the US Air Force starting 5 years ago, where we did a research program that mapped the entire force. So in Air Force, the US Air Force is 680,000 people. And that ranges from someone who might have a high school education and is 18 years old, to someone that is in their 50s and has a PhD and years of experience. So you have a very, very highly variable workforce. how do you think about a program to train them on AI? That was a really difficult task. And we put together a whole model on how to do that and did a lot of research and piloting around that. That was so successful that in 2023, we actually expanded that to the entire Department of Defense and created a whole asynchronous learning program around that to be able to train 2.8 million people. We work with a large telecom in Europe that is looking at how do you have everyone in the organization have the same language? How do they, that's a big thing with AI, especially right now. All these people are using these words, LLM, you know, different acronyms, algorithm, but do they really know what they all mean? And when they're talking in meetings and talking about different things, do they understand it? So how do you create that? How do you have people that are actually working very closely together on an assembly line, all upskilled in the same way so that they are continuously speaking the same language? And then one that I'm really proud of because I helped to build this one specifically is we're working with a university in Malaysia as well as the government on how do we create the new generation of talent for working in the government, for making decisions in this sort of difficult moment. And so this is a program where MIT, we do all of the online learning, and then the Asia School of Business there does the in-person and sort of building on that ACE model of individual asynchronous, in-person group, and then pushing that back to on the job. And so that's one that's been very successful. So I'm going to leave you with this, and then I'd love to get into the discussion. I think this is a great quote from one of the professors that I work with on that success is not necessarily only going to come from productivity. We feel like that we're always trying to be more and more and more productive, but that in fact we need to focus on having our organizations be more intelligent ones. And how do we organize to be more intelligent, and how do we train our people that are working in those organizations to be more intelligent? So with that, I'd love to open up to discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, we will have all the time for any question and comment. I was thinking, Miguel, looking at the future, the next 10 years, and you mentioned the 63% of jobs. Now you go to different type of reports, and this is from the World Economic Forum. Now, when you look at another of your colleagues from MIT that is saying actually the impact on productivity at best is going to be on 1% during the next 10 years. And it's a Nobel Prize winner, by the way. So, but
Darren.
Yeah. So the question is, and that's his point.
So I think at MIT you have optimists and you have pessimists, and the same in the world, I think.
But he doesn't look to be a pessimist. His message is, the problem is at the leadership level. That we are dealing with AI like we did with previous technology. So we are trying to do exactly the same. So we try to say, okay, let's use AIs to make faster what we are doing in the past. And that's automation, right? To do faster, to do more with less, that's automation. And that's what I see also talking to many people. But his point is, hey, maybe we need to create different things now.
Yes.
Here is not a question of just changing how we are doing things, but here there is a much more revolutionary change.
I mean, I think that's sort of the point of this quote, is that how do we actually transform the way that we do things? That's the point of Supermind Design, that we don't just have to basically do digital transformation and take what we had done like manually and digitize it, right? And let's not just do that again and take the way that we did things and just add AI to make it faster, but actually can we now do things that we've never been able to do before? And how do we change our organizations and our structures to do that?
What is the sense of urgency in your view on that? So you were touching on education, and you're saying, okay, next 10 years, you want to approach 1 billion people on that. I just read a report from the US Congress that came a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about that before the event. So with some estimation that 100 million jobs will be impacted in the United States substantially on shifting on the next 10 years. I have the feeling we are moving too slowly in universities and schools.
I think a lot of people share that feeling. I think that you can interpret one way of what's happening in America, of sort of trying to push change. That I try to, I'm a glass half full kind of person. I always try to look at what are the opportunities even in bad situations. And I look at the situation of everything that's happening and how do we push to have the change that we know needs to be happening. How do we use some of this moment of crisis to push towards what will be better? And so I think that let's not mourn some of the loss of some things, but let's think about how do we move faster to make the system better. Do we love the current system so much that we want to cry about sort of the loss of it, or do we want to create the future that we would like to have? And I think that's why are we arguing about hanging on to some things when we can actually move forward? And let's make sure that we create the next the way that we want it to be. And that's what I think we should be focusing on.
When you start this type of initiatives like Horizon or Universal AI, MIT Race, and many others that you have, so do you know what you expect as an outcome at the end of the day? How you go on the planning of these sort of very radical initiatives, or
I think that MIT does tend to take a research approach to things. I think we also take an agile approach to things. We have put a stake in the ground about delivering personalized learning to 1 billion people within the next 10 years. And we are starting on that path by launching MIT Learn, which is a new platform, and Universal AI, which is a new program. Do we think that in 10 years they're going to look exactly like the way that they look now? I think we can almost say definitively no, they will not. But are we worried about them being perfect in this exact moment? No, we will, in an agile fashion, learn and advance and evolve. And that's the way that my team operates.
Yeah, please.
My question as well, that, if I would ask, how many years ago you started open learning?
Open learning started in 2012.
Yeah, and then you defined, some goals. And do you backtrace, if those goals were reached today, and do you actually care in a good way? Because agile thinking says, okay.
You don't hang on too tightly to like low-level goals, and I'd say that. So the quick history on that is in 2000-2001 timeframe, MIT decided to launch what's called open courseware, where we wanted to put online, because at that moment, gosh, remember back 2000 when online was new? Like that was really before we had these, and that we decided to put online, and it was a very radical thing at the time, all of our courseware online for the world for free. Like, drop the mic. And everyone was like, you're going to destroy the business model of education, of higher education, all of those things. Well, it didn't. And I think that it did a lot of great things, and it helped us to learn. We launched something then, we did a partnership with Harvard, and we created something called edX. which then was, if you remember MOOCs, of course, which now everyone, I think mostly knows what MOOCs are. At the time, it was like MOOC. But then, so then we created that in a MOOC platform. So MIT Learn and Universal AI are still on the edX backbone of the free software, free to the world, to utilize these things. Those things continue, but we're also sort of building on top of them, and exactly what you're saying, in an agile way. I think we try to hang on to the top level goal, not get dragged down by the individual goals that were important in a moment in time, but see the important goals to reach the future goals.
Yeah, I believe this is good learning for, for us, for many organizations, that, we sometimes also get stuck to the sunk costs, so to say, also in a same way as to the development. But we've done so much for this. We have made such and such decision, like 5 years ago, that we will build this. But today's situation doesn't require the same. So we need to drop the past.
No, you're right. I mean, and I think the question had come up before of who sets the goals. And it's a very important question. That's why I really do like that definition of intelligence. And I always like to start with the question of, we talk about AI so much right now, but do we actually think what the words mean? And thinking about, that's an important one to think about, who does set the goals? And do the goal posts change over time? And how do you have everyone understand what the goals are? Right, to be operating in complex systems. So I try to come with frameworks and ways of thinking and how we're thinking and what we're doing, but I'm not necessarily saying to you here that these are what you need to be doing in one sense. It's to have you think.
No, when you say who sets the goal, and if we compare with the internet, right?
Yeah.
So the internet started in military setting before, and then university settings.
Sure.
And it was, then you have all the hard infrastructures. So the private sector didn't have, I might be wrong here, at least at the beginning, the primary leverage on how the internet as a technology was moving. What I see now with AI is that Google and Meta and
The
Alibaba and DeepSeek and so they are AI. Universities and government, we are just trying to see how to swim there, right? Do you feel that difference as well? And that is a little bit scary because they are setting the goals and how maybe they are setting, or they are just on a race. So we are it's a different world. It's a different phenomena. It's a transformation.
There's similarities that I think people are feeling to the internet, and then there's differences. And we are in a moment where everyone's sort of looking to see which way it will go, or a lot of people, it sort of feels that way. Yeah. So I understand why you would say that. For sure.
Yeah. More questions? Yes.
First of all, thank you for presentation. I was quite impressed, but I would like a little bit of challenge, if I may.
Sure.
Something that you've told, for me, I'm as a professor here at Riga Business School, and I was very, very happy when we returned from online physical class. And then you were mentioning the words like individual learning, online learning, dependency on AI. My question is to you, have you considered this thing when these programs would come, especially like a student, somewhere like 25, 30, 35, and we are just going through process and getting through maturity process. That's the persons we will be.
Yeah.
And then through going through this process, through these AI programs, is there a risk or challenge, and have you considered this, that these young guys still, I call them young, even at 30, 35, they might become dependent on this way of learning?
Oh, so
And this is something, what scares me, because, whenever I do like online class, even after 1 hour, I feel so tired and frustrated, because I don't feel the students.
I understand
And then
completely.
imagining there is an AI program generated, even myself, who somehow delivers this, and there is individual
Human
students working individual, individual adopted programs, everything. But then in the next life, after they graduate or after they leave the class or whatever environment they leave, they become dependent on this way of learning, applying their skills. Because you need to practice. Whatever you do, you start
Absolutely.
working with computer. Like I was just delivering like a class to the students, explaining how to prepare cash flow. It was online class, and I felt, I get frustrated with them because, I don't feel them. I have to sit with them like working myself with a class, and they have to work in the team, because the result will come out in the team.
Yeah.
Instead, if there is online class, something generated by AI, then what will be tomorrow with this learner? Sorry for the long
No,
question.
no.
I'm just thinking, this is brilliant, but I see some risks and challenges. My question is, how would you overcome all this?
Absolutely. So I think that, like, if that's the way you understood what I said, let me clarify. I am not suggesting that AI is just going to take over and be training everyone. That's not what we're building. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is actually thinking about how do we leverage AI for a piece of learning to improve the way that we can do things and add to it. I still very much believe in the importance and power of human-to-human learning. Very, very, very important. We are using absolutely. But I do believe that AI can have a piece in that, and we need to figure out how to create the system that it adds, simply adds. And I think there's a lot of clever ways that it can do that. I think that a lot of people don't have the luxury of having you go home with them and do their homework with them. And they're there home alone, frustrated themselves, saying, when I was in class with professor, he made it feel so easy, and now I'm here struggling alone with my computer. How do we have a tutor that can help at that midnight hour because they waited too long to do it and you're not answering email, right? So I think that there's ways that we can think about how to augment. But the ACE methodology, where did I put that? The ACE methodology that I talked about is that we want to have this type of synchronous learning that is with teams of humans and teachers. Like that type of work, super important and very much part of how we believe that learning needs to be done. It's this part that there are some interesting things that we can do to augment it, but it's all three things and continuously that's so important, because like you said, it really matters the most on how is it applied.
Tomorrow you will be on the job.
Exactly.
If you're dependent just on AI,
Exactly.
then you start losing productivity there, not here.
That's right. That's right. So it's all three together that you think about in a continuous way. And then if we think about here, that the way that things are changing so fast that we need ways that a lot of people are not going to have the luxury of quitting work and coming back to school for 2 years, right? So how do we think about these ways of creative ways of helping people to learn like in new ways? So I think it's just how do we augment how humans learn best? And how do we think about harnessing these new tools to not just do the very traditional ways that we do?
Still, we need these conversations.
Oh, 100%.
Because certainly for people that are studying in this school or in MIT, where you have a very small ratio of faculty member per student, then we can say this, right? So it's going to augment what we are offering. But I have been in a conversation on Thursday, I believe, with a foundation from the US, and what was their interest? Say, okay, how we can bring the elite education we offer to the top schools in United States and UK, to all the millions of kids in Africa and Asia, that they have no access to that. And maybe, yeah, we cannot, maybe agentic AI, etc., can be not the perfect solution, not the equivalent solution, but it can be somehow a little bit better of what they are getting today, right?
For me, it's most important the skill what they got tomorrow they can use from productivity, from economic perspective.
I was going to pull up and show you, let's see. A platform that we've just built called MIT Learn.
Okay.
And basically, one thing that's really interesting is we've created this AI tool that is throughout the site on how do we actually integrate a ChatGPT-like solution, but that's fine-tuned for the content. And we've done some research on that. Your students, remember the guy that's doing his homework at midnight and you're not answering the phone? That he's going to ChatGPT to ask the questions. But what we find that student learners are getting very frustrated because ChatGPT doesn't answer it as well as you do. So how do we create something that actually is fine-tuned to that material, right? That cannot give the answer, but will actually help to
it's a tutor, right?
Exactly. And so we fine-tuned this tutor to each of the courses that we have on this platform. And then it can do different things, right? It's not necessarily going to give them the answer, but it's going to help them through different questions. So this is something that we just launched this summer. And then the Universal AI program is on this, and then we're rolling out a number of different programs from there. And then we hope to actually roll out something. One of the reasons I'm here, we have a long-term relationship of things that we've been doing is a number of sort of short programs that are fine-tuned for people in the workforce. I don't have hours and hours to devote to this. How do I quickly learn what is AI for my job and how can it help me? So we've taken a lot of the work that we did with the Air Force and all the research that we've done with organizations over the years and created these sort of stackable learning programs. So that's...
I don't want to monopolize the discussion because it seems that the forefront here is taking the whole... Yes, okay.
I actually want to continue this debate or discussion on the frustration I just heard from the colleague. Because what I hear is a fear that if we become too dependent on technology which we don't understand, if I can create a cash flow just with the help of AI, so what will happen on day X when I will not get access to?
You will not understand the concept.
And now my question and the question to you is, if we look into the history of human mankind, then I believe that we have faced this fear already several times, appearance of books printed, or electricity. We are so much dependent on electricity. Yes, we know mostly in Latvia how to survive with fireplaces.
Do we go back to the forest?
Exactly, but then I believe that we already have a lot of history for humankind, so that we are used to many things and we rely on them, not knowing how do they work. I believe most of us can't repair some home appliance, I don't know, electric iron or
I know, I need a husband who can do that.
Without or ChatGPT. It helps actually, yeah.
YouTube, actually.
My question is that first, I think already we have some history with similar...
We do, absolutely.
And do you see that AI is somewhat still different, causing more threat than we have experienced before?
I think it's fairly similar. Perhaps it's just even more complicated like that will never understand it completely in a way, and that's sort of relinquishing more control, that it's sort of this, because it's electricity plus the computer plus mobile plus this. A funny thing is analogy, do you know when cars were first invented, they would have a big horse head at the front because they didn't want the horses to be scared of the cars. And I sort of I feel like we're in that moment where, right, that to us now it seems sort of ridiculous that you would put horse heads on cars so that the horses wouldn't be afraid. I don't think we have the model on how to think about it fully yet. And that's where I think these discussions are so important, that we actually do ask the difficult questions. We do, as educators, think through what is the model on how to evolve what we do in the best possible way, to always keep our goal in mind is to educate and shape these young minds to prepare them for the world that they are going to live in. And how do we best do that? So that, again, I said I don't come with all the answers. Often I come with more questions, but I think it's through this sort of questioning and discussion that we get to the answers.
I help. So I'm really interested in maybe from all the research that you have done, you can see some insights of the future organizational structure. How AI could affect the organizational structure.
Very good question.
Oh, sure.
That's
I think that it is already helping sort of with agile decision making and agile development. As we were sort of riffing earlier, that agile's been around for a long time, but it feels like it was often regulated to technology teams. That I think you're finding that it is becoming more widely accepted and used in organizations out of necessity, because AI is pushing the way that we're organizing. So we're making decisions faster in more agile ways. We're creating, you've probably seen a number of new operating structures where it used to be a hierarchy, like, sort of decisions are made at the top and then sort of float down. Now you have these organizational structures where you have a management team in the middle and sort of the spoke model. That's just one example. I think that there's a lot of organizations that have been trialing multiple decision-making structures within them. How do you have a bit of a democracy within a hierarchy with sort of a market structure on how people sort of make decisions? So that's an area that I'm super interested in how do we transform that. There's consulting firms that have been really sort of like advancing on different models like that, and I think you're starting to see it in more traditional corporate environments.
We need to look at every industry and the value chain of the industry, how it's changing, right? Because when we look at, and that will impact the organizational structure at the end of the day, right? So when you look at internet, how it turned down barriers, right? So immediately the consumer could switch provider. So Amazon came up, right? And now AI is producing even one level more, that is on the content as well. So who produce content and which is the content that goes on there?
Oh, so the IP questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. There, I didn't want to get there.
But no, I don't want to go there.
But once you get there,
I think we're almost out of time.
Yeah, that's because some people think is the nightmare of AI developers, right?
It is. I think that's a huge question that we need to figure out, and we're still. I think that we had. Getty Images, right? And there's been a lawsuit there for quite a while. We had a generative AI summit at MIT a couple years ago, and we had one of the lawyers from the Getty lawsuit sort of talking about, sort of laying on the table what are the issues there. and how it's difficult to think through how to handle that, but some innovative suggestions on how to do it. So,
and you can see how it's changing all the creative industry there when you go into images. So if you look at the income level per artist, it's going down, you know. So because they are very.
well, that's why you had the Hollywood artist strikes.
That's
Yeah.
you have there. Okay. So yes, we are almost out of time, but I think this has been an amazing conversation. For the interest and the question, I think we need more of these conversations as well. And I hope, Kathleen, you will be part of those conversations as well.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's give a clap.